me, I find it really comforting that God has a plan because I love a plan. I've got loads of friends who really don't love a plan, and they're like, what if God has this big plan for me and I hate it? Like, what then? And I think, so again, it's personality stuff, isn't it? And it's but God has put really unique stuff in all of us. And I think if we're not finding out what that is and truly believing that that's actually going to be an exciting thing and a safe thing and a peaceful thing, and that God wants us to be that unique person, then it is always just going to feel off kilter. It's not going to feel aligned. And I also think that we quite often think that this purpose and this bigger plan is always going to be a mystery. And yes, there's going to be an element of that, but I really think he does want to talk to us about it. And having gone on this kind of big discovery of myself, I really do feel like it's my purpose to help other people find their purpose. And I don't think it has to be hard. Like, I think because I like an adventure and I like joy, that is how I see this process being, and what I kind of bring to that space. And if you get me as a coach, then I'm like, let's just ask God a load of questions and see what he says, because he wants to be in conversation with us. He wants us to know who we are and where we're headed. And yes, he might not always give us the finer details, because that's probably not the best plan for us to know all the details. Definitely, I'm sure it's definitely not for me. I still get answers from him every day, and I ask him questions and I go, well, what should I be doing and what is the plan for that? And I get answers, and I don't think that I'm kind of a particular type or special type of person that means that I get the answers and someone else doesn't. I really believe that everyone can have those kind of conversations with him. So, and actually that I might know more stuff about me now, and there is a certain element of self-awareness and emotional intelligence that make things a bit more tricky in some ways, because there is so much going on in my mind all the time, and I'm like, oh gosh, maybe this would be easier if I was just completely oblivious, because it's a bit tiring doing all the work all the time. But I know really that that's not true, that it is worth going there. And just being in conversation with God about all the big stuff that actually doesn't have to feel so big is amazing.
Welcome everyone to HEARTtalk, coming to you live from Kota Kinabalu in Sabah in Malaysia. And so I'm delighted that today, my guest today is going to teach me and all of us how to get back to square one and how to really get ourselves aligned, because this to me is one of the most important podcasts I've done. And I hope that you'll enjoy yourself, because the lady in question is one of United Kingdom's top. She's a really lovely life coach, and her core values have made her exclusively exclusive. Let me put it that way. and I want to kind of like introduce. Her name is Catherine Gray. She comes from Bristol in the United Kingdom. And to set the stage right, I'm going to read from her own writings that come from within her. I love seeing people get excited and hopeful about the life they have now and the one they could have in the future. I also love seeing people embrace change and doing change well. Change is an amazing thing, and whether you are scared of it or not sure how to tackle it, my creativity, energy, and super organized persona can help you find a way through to a better version of your life and of your work, and both. So here we go. We are going to have a fun time about matters of the heart. And so join me to welcome Catherine Gray from Bristol in the United Kingdom. Welcome, Catherine.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. It would be, 7:36 in the morning in Bristol?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bit of an early one for us.
So thank you so much for waking up this morning and all of us are going to join you for breakfast. because because we're going to talk about a very important topic because this goes to the core, the real reason why we are alive. You know, what are we living for, and how do we identify ourselves? So we're going to be students now of what is called the value system of life. Is there any meaning to value today? You know, with the kind of world that we're living in. We talk about crisis in England. You know, recently you all had the trying to get the leader of your country, and they were all talking about a crisis coming of living. You know, winter is coming, the cost of energy, all these things. You know, are in the forefront and in the world. And how do we as individuals live in that space? First of all, keeping our space within ourselves well protected while we are engaging in what's happening in the world. So, you know, it's all about choices, choices, decisions, decisions every moment of the day. The moment we wake up, it's about choices and decisions. And so I would like you to kind of like start off by how do we make the right choices in the beginning of the day to be able to navigate through the whole day, and where are we living from? And so take us there first to yourself, because you got a fantastic super persona, and I'm sure many who are listening in would wonder what makes you tick, and it has to be ticking from the inside.
Mm,
So start with us about choices, and how do we make it right?
yeah, that's a great question. And I have many, many answers. So one thing about me is that I just love everything. That's like it's not quite one of my values, but it describes an element of my personality that I am the enthusiast. So I basically never have one answer to any question because I can get excited about anything and everything.
Okay.
Um, but obviously that can work against me when I'm making choices. So I am very um, I am quite a structured, ordered person at the same time, which seems I'm writing a blog actually called like The Life of Opposites, because I really feel like there's a lot of things that I live with that are in tension all the time. But that actually it's quite a helpful tension. So because of how easily I can get kind of pulled here and there and excited about anything that anyone tells me, I do make sure that I start the day with a focused, right, what is going on in my mind, what is going on in my spirit, what is going on in my body, and let's just have a focus for the day and yeah, see what I need to notice and move on from there, see what God's saying about it. Um, and have those moments throughout the day as well of actually taking a moment to be like, am I just running after or reacting to all the things that are happening all over the place? Or am I actually making a choice every time of, is this what I want to be thinking about? Is this where I want to be going? Is this in alignment with who I am and what I really believe? So it's kind of sounds like all the big questions that you wonder whether you're ever going to answer, but actually really bringing it into the day to day and being like, it doesn't have to be a big unknown question. I can really just think about it and make some clear decisions.
Okay, so, well, that's a nice place to start, but I want to go back to your beginnings. Because growing up, and when does one start to formulate core values?
Mm.
Whether there is in childhood, there are some who say 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Can core values change as we grow older, depending upon where we're living in the environment we're in? As a single person, or somebody who's a single mother, or someone who's got a relationship. I mean, just tell me for you, because you are the one who has reached a stage where you can coach others. So
Yeah.
obviously you would have gone through changes in your own life, and how did you embrace them? So tell us, when does one start to think and write down these core values? When would be an educated adult worksheet?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So I think they are just in us. I think there are certain things that are just unchanging and they are in us. But obviously there's certain things in life that are going to kind of adjust them or make them feel or show up differently or make them be completely ignored. And that's when we usually notice that something's going on. So for me, I got ME when I was 10. So it was like a chronic fatigue thing. At the time in the UK, doctors didn't believe that kids could get chronic fatigue. So I was just getting tested for everything and anything every few months. And they were saying, just got a viral thing, you just got to just get on with it. Whereas I actually spent 10 years effectively in bed and trying to get to school every now and then going back to bed. And so I think for me, that was happening primarily when I was a teenager, and I started thinking, right, who are you when you can't do anything?
Right.
Because whenever you meet someone, they go, what do you do? Or what have you been up to at the weekend? Or what's what do you like to do to relax? And I'm like, I don't relax because I sleep and then I feel like I haven't slept and I don't do anything. Like, what the heck?
Hmm.
Um, and so it was quite a really hard place to be, actually, especially when you're in a faith community as well, of how everyone is saying, what's your place in this community and what can you bring? And I was saying, I don't even get to my place of worship. I am just on the sofa or in bed. So I think from there, I started thinking, right, there must be something else that's not just about doing. Everyone else seems to just be doing, but actually, who are we being and what do we bring to something? So I then started looking into all kinds of, well, I guess at that point I was just like, I don't really know who I am. I'm the ill person.
Right.
So I started doing a lot of different kind of personality assessments or skills assessments that were out there, and kind of looking into what my options might be if I could ever go on to further study, if my body and my brain could cope with that. And every one of these assessments that I didn't quite fit in with who I thought I was, to the point where I was
Okay.
just like, I can't be this weird anomaly of the human race, and they can't all be broken. So like,
Right.
what's going on?
No, but let me just pause you there, Catherine, because this is incredible of of what you see. What I'm trying to get into, like any surgeon will, is that you went for these assessment tests, so you were actually seeking out yourself. You see, and that's a big thing because many, at least in this part of the world, will just accept that they are like that and that's what's going to be, and they'll probably go on through life that way. But there was something inside of you was telling you, well, get this test done, get that, because in other words, what I'm saying is that you found within yourself there's a greater person in there.
Mm.
There's a greater light that's about to shine. What's happening? Why is it so dim? And I think that, so you're talking about that started happening in teenage, right?
Yeah.
Well
So I
done.
was ill.
Okay.
So I was seriously ill from between the ages of 10 and kind of 18, 19. And so it was kind of near the end of that time that I was like, right, let's figure out what's going on with me. Um, and I still wasn't using the word values at that point, I don't think. I was more thinking, who, who do I show up as, but hadn't joined the dots with that being a values thing. Um, and a while after that, I found a thing called Clifton Strengths, which is actually an assessment of your potential talent. And I have never had something describe me in such a way as that. Like, it's literally like a 40-minute, you quick fire answer all these questions, so you can't, present yourself in the way that you wish you were, or overanalyze what all the questions are asking you. It is just getting you. And yeah, I was quite flabbergasted because it really did completely describe me. But not only that, it was giving you some fluidity and room for growth. So it wasn't just, here's a report, it tells you a thing, that's it now forever, whether you like it or not. And
Right.
it's probably just a bit of paper that you'll put on your desk and go, oh well, that seemed insightful at the time, but I don't know what to do with that. This gives you a kind of, these are your top innate built-in strengths, the things that you wake up and your brain is just doing every morning. But if you also focus on those and put time and attention on them, there is exponential growth and joy in those areas. So
So,
that's when I started getting excited,
wow.
because that then started speaking into things that I now realize were also values for me, because joy is one of my core values. We'll get onto that a bit more in a bit.
Okay, so what were
But
your top three at that time? When you did that score, and
yeah,
and it was literally a mirror image of what you thought you were, and it was now printed out in a piece of paper. What were the top three, if you can share that?
yeah. Can I give you my top six?
Well,
I
there
need
you
to.
go. Let's go top six, and then the top three would be probably the highlights. So give the top six. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll reel off some words and then I'll tell you a bit more about them. So on the Clifton Strengths assessment, I have strategic, developer, responsibility, belief, connectedness, and arranger. And so it just means I wake up and I'm literally going, what are all the options? Where are all the pathways? I want to be the most effective. Let's figure it all. I'm doing all this kind of what if, but in a quite exciting, high speed way. That's my strategy. And then the developer is always going, where's the growth? I need to have noticed growth, whether it's in people or things or situations. And that in particular started alerting me to the fact that, okay, there are certain situations that I put myself in where I am more frustrated or more, I'm not very assertive naturally, and I am more pushed to be assertive or feel frustrated in certain situations. So it was this developer thing that started making me think, right, there's something deeper going on every now and then, and what is it that's making me feel either extremely positive about all the growth that's going on around me or extremely frustrated and pushing me to be more kind of assertive or forthright than I normally would be. And I think that is where I started thinking, right, there's a value somewhere. Actually,
Right.
it means that someone's kind of crossed the line of something that I feel comfortable or not comfortable with, and it's getting this reaction from me. So that I started making different choices when I realized that, because I thought I can't actually be in a team or a place where there is not recognized growth, or we're not going after growth. If everyone's just doing the same thing because we've always doing the same thing, it drives me completely bonkers. And even if they're saying that they recognize that and they don't want to do that and they still are, then I get and I'm just like
Yeah. Yeah. Right. 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 Okay.
um yeah. And in the belief piece, it just means that I always need to feel like there's a purpose to something. Responsibility means I'm someone, if you ask me to do something, I'm absolutely going to do it, and I get very confused if someone comes to check up on me or ask how I'm going with it, because I'm like, well, I said I was going to do it, so I'm doing it. And connectedness means it's quite different actually for different people. It shows up differently, but for me it just means that I see patterns and connections and kind of can connect the dots with loads of different things, which is an amazing skill for when I'm coaching, because someone might just kind of do a half an hour telling me all the stuff, and I can already see the threads, and I can already see, well, clearly this is linked to this, or that came from there, and can ask them what they're noticing
Right.
about that. And a ranger kind of feeds into my needing loads of stuff going on all the time. It's the spinning the plates. I just love kind of
Right.
organizing and reorganizing, and yeah.
What you have just shared is so different from. I think everybody's got different core values, right? Because if you were to do, I mean, you've been a coach now for how long? How many years now?
So I got qualified in 2016.
So there you go. So when everybody comes up with their different plates, right? How different can that be from, for example, somebody saying, if you ask them, what are your core values? And they start rattling off with authenticity, courage, all the usual jargon that you can get in Google. When is real becoming real? I mean, where does one
Yeah.
really, just tell yourself, well, quit that old jargon, because if you tell me that's all crap, it doesn't work with me. But I've been living on autopilot. So how do you really fish out,
Yeah,
skeletonize
yeah.
someone's life and put it into core values? Where's the beginning of that?
Yeah. So what I just described, I don't think does completely describe my values. That is more what is my inbuilt talent and how that outplays. So it's how I do things, not why I do things, because I think
Right.
there's a real difference in that as well. Um, and but for me, when I really started realizing, right, there's another layer here, I need to figure out what my values are. I will always just go and talk to loads of people and read a load of things and see what's online. But I suddenly realized that my friend, who's also a coach, had all this hours and hours of training in core values. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, let's just do a coach swap, and I'll coach you on Clifton strengths and you coach me on values, and let's see what happens.
Okay, okay.
And so I had hours with her. Like I was honestly expecting. So what before that, I'd taken people through a process of, you have a load of little cards with a load of words on, like you were just reading off, and you get people to look at all the cards and see which words jump out at them or they feel aligned with. And there is value in that, but I also feel like people kind of pick up cards that they go, oh, that's a nice word, everyone else likes that word, I'd
Yes,
really like that word
that's
to be
right.
me.
It becomes a
um
marketplace, a marketplace value, you know?
yeah, or it will look really good if I write that my business is kind and ethical and this, and of course we want those things, but it just becomes these things that everyone's just saying because they know it will make someone like them. So
Yeah.
so we did start off still, when my friend, when we did the deeper dive on it, we still started off with a whole big list of words, but she just kept asking more and more questions of like, which ones actually mean something to you, which ones kind of, how does this play out? Don't just pick up a word and go, that one, that one, that one, that one. Actually think through, what difference does this make to you? And even just doing things that sound really simple, like writing a list of what makes you the most excited, or what can you talk about for hours, and everyone's just like, oh my gosh, they're always going on about this thing. That is talking to something very deep in you, often passion related as well as values, but it's bringing up something in you that is very core. And the opposite is true of when something will make you incredibly angry, or kind of some like quite kind of big reaction that maybe you weren't expecting, let alone anyone else was expecting. That is usually when something's kind of been crossed and you're like, oh, that was not all right. So what was that?
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so just finding out those things. Like, I was talking to a group of student entrepreneurs yesterday, and they were saying, you know, as an organization, because they have like a committee, and they do all this entrepreneurial stuff at uni, why we've got all these values, but we're feeling so unmotivated, and we're feeling so, it's tricky, what's going
Right.
on? And I said, but maybe you're not all aligned to the group values. Maybe you will compromise too much to get this wonderful group vision and values, but actually it's not sitting right with a load of you. So you just need to kind of go back and see what can work for everyone, and what do you need to release certain people from. So I think a lot of it, and this is why I love coaching so much as well, a lot of it is people do one exercise or one kind of bit of research or looking into something, and they think great, but they don't go any further. And actually these things are always a bit of a longer journey than potentially you want them to be.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
actually
right.
I think there's value in that longer journey. So you probably will not going to be able to see it on screen properly, but what my coach friend ended up doing for me with my values is saying, I want you to make a collage. I want you to have those words that really, really mean something to you, like journal about it, really think through, what's the definition of this word? Everyone loves freedom, but what does freedom actually mean to you? Because you will come up with a definition that is completely different from someone else.
Mm.
So actually go there and write that definition, and write what other words link to that word that really mean something to you. And is there a Bible verse that actually completely describes that for you? And or it might be a song lyric, or it might be an image. So she challenged me to make a collage, which you probably can't see because I got
Yeah,
excited
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I made it all colourful, and then it all faded because I got overexcited and left it in a place in my office that I would always see, but it's in the sun.
Right.
And so actually for me, my core values are adventure, compassion, stewardship, joyful, tenacity, spiritual.
Beautiful.
So in a way, it's what you were saying. I can just reel off a load of words, and that can sound kind of nice, but nothingness at the same time.
Yeah.
But I know if there hasn't been a spiritual element to my day yet, or if I haven't done something that counts as adventurous for me this
Mm.
week, there will be something in me that's just a bit kind of, oh, like a bit on edge, like something's not right.
Right.
And you can go through life and just not even acknowledge that or want to figure out what that is.
Mm.
But because I have this sheet right next to me on my desk all the time, I can, as soon as I'm feeling a bit kind of not right, or, oh, that was a bigger emotion than I was expecting, I can go, right, is that because someone kind of wasn't being compassionate or wasn't stewarding something well? And it just really wound me up. And
Mm.
actually now, do I take a moment and just deal with that and let it go and move on, or do I need to make bigger decisions about what I'm doing with this person.
And, yeah, I mean, perfect. I mean, that's a very powerful thing to do because, you know, a lot of like when after working for 40 years and with three children who are now all doctors and all that, many of us live lives for the other. And we have actually gone through life just living it for another person, another being. You know what I mean? And I think that's where we have lost out. Living on autopilot, on automation, as opposed to living out values. Which I mean, I told you. I mean, if you tell me now, Charles, what are your values? I've been looking all over the place because I don't know. I've been living it out on automation, not knowing that that's what is important for me. And last night I was talking to this lady who's my next guest next week, and she was telling me, she said, look, if you are sitting there and you are binging away and you're trying to lose weight at the same time, you have just got no respect for yourself. And the word respect popped up, you see, because if you don't respect yourself first, then how on earth are you going to live out that respect for someone else? And I think you're right. Until you're really faced with these issues, it's difficult. So yeah. So thank you for that one. Now you got six there. You got six values there. Take one for example. Which is your top one? Give me your top one that really matters to you. Second
Oh,
from
I'm
spiritual.
not. I'm not sure I can give you one. It's really annoying
So what
because,
I'm
but
so
also I think part of it is so often you can do this exercise with like 50 to 100 words and it feels all a bit overwhelming because you've got all these words. But
right.
actually, some people can whittle it down really fast. Some people are literally there for hours being like, I still have 30 words and they're all really important to me. And actually the challenge is to get it down to kind of 5 to 7 because there will be some
Yeah.
that are just much more core to you and others are still important but they're not gonna yeah they're not gonna have that value to you as the others. And so I think although I still believe they're unchanging, there are certain days where you'll get a different answer
Yes.
from me on which is showing up because actually um so adventure to me sometimes means going places and sometimes just means having done a certain thing. And so at the moment, I'm probably feeling a bit of a rub on the adventure thing because I haven't left Bristol for a while or I haven't got on my paddleboard for a while. And and so I notice it more because of the lack of something.
Right.
Whereas other times I'm very aware, stay of the stewardship side of things because I'm always very keen that we're doing things well. And for years, I didn't realize, I thought I was just saying that annoying thing that everyone's saying. We want excellence, we want to do things well. And I'm like, well, that's all very well, but are we? Like, how are we? And what do we do when we're not?
So how am
And I
I?
was,
That kind of
and
thing.
I didn't realize that actually that was completely interlinked with me wanting to steward people and resources and situations really, really well. And actually, if I've experienced a lot of those things in successfully happening, then I'll be getting kind of a bit of a high from that because I'll be like, look at all these things we're
Yeah,
stewarding
yeah,
everything
yeah.
so well.
Right, right. You
And so
know,
that will be kind of in the forefront of my mind, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's my like number one thing. It's just how I'm reacting to it at the time.
no, listen, I'm going to call you coach now because I'm going to come up with a value where I'm sure many would resonate with what I'm saying, okay? So I'm a plastic surgeon. I've worked 40 years, 35 years practicing and blah, blah, blah. And I've struggled with areas of finance, for example. When I say struggle within inverted commas, because I mean, I've just put my daughter through Cork University in Ireland, which cost about 1.8 million. So I can never say that I struggled with it because of finance, but I never looked after those finances. So I was a bad steward
Mm.
of what was coming into me and trying to put it right. Now, if stewardship is a core value, would that be how it is played out in a wrong way where I've not exercised that core value? Am I thinking of it the right way?
I don't know. So it'd be different. When you started saying that, I wondered actually whether we were kind of slightly veering off into kind of some limiting beliefs. and I don't know if you use that terminology or not, but I
I've heard of
believe
that.
there's things in us all that we have kind of been told or have learnt to believe are true, and they're really not true, and we just haven't noticed that yet. And that is an exercise in awareness. It can happen in coaching, it can happen with God, it can happen in just times when you're kind of having your mindfulness time.
Right, right.
But being like, oh, there's this whole thing that I'm living my life by as if it is a value or an understanding of something, and actually it's effectively a lie, and I just hadn't realized that. So I'd be interested to know whether there's actually something about money that your mind is believing about money, and that's how you act around it or deal with it, that there's just some kind of adjustment to make
So when
around
you
that.
talk
So
about,
it might not be specifically a core value thing, it might, but they're all interlinked. This
yeah,
is where
well,
my connectedness comes back, because I can't see anything in a silo. I'm like, oh, there's so many exciting links and everything.
no, this is why. No, it's interesting talking because when people talk about core values, it becomes a system, and that system operates with different levels and departments within it, to make you really live the best version of yourself. And so, if I were to wake up in the morning and say, okay, I'm not going to get angry. My core value is to be calm and collected, the kind of thing. I don't want to. I mean, sometimes I find it hard to operate. I'm listening to people talk, but how do I put that operationally as a core value? That I'm on my way to work. My core value is, to just enjoy the day, kind of thing. Breathe the sunshine, smell the flowers, that kind of thing. And the moment I enter the clinic, I go, pew, something happens, and I break my core values. How does that play out in life? I want to hear you talk about life, and how do these value systems really do they really work?
Yeah. So maybe it's like, I'm don't want to be suggesting what yours are, or kind of
No, you can tell me because
directing anyone. I'm wondering whether we were kind of talking around what your values actually are. So when you're talking like that, it might actually be that one of your core values is optimism or fun, and that actually you're frustrated because the anger comes up, and it's the opposite of what you were going for. But it doesn't mean that the calmness or the anger was the value, if you see what I
right.
mean.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
yeah, and that's just something kind of for you to have more of a think about, or kind of do a bit of a dig around of like, right, where is this actually coming from? What was I actually after? And it's almost I run a networking group for coaches in the Southwest here, and we've got someone coming next month who has written a whole thesis on relational flow. And I
Right.
don't know if you know much about the flow as a thing.
Uh-huh.
But I do think we kind of enter into these moments and times of flow when we are feeling most aligned with our own values, but also it can happen with someone else. So there's a really interesting research into how do we get into flow in a coaching relationship. And I just can't wait to quiz him more, basically, about like, so does that mean that I found someone whose values are very aligned to me, and that was the starting point for the flow?
Mm-hmm.
Or can it happen with someone that you in another situation in life you're completely misaligned with, but in that specific moment you somehow got the flow?
Right. No, I mean
I don't know the answer
perfect.
to that yet.
No, this is lightning. Because you want to flow with life. You only got this one life to flow. Rivers, rivers of blessing kind of thing. Like talking to you now, so I can put fun as a core value because I love the energy that brings to life, and that's why when one of my key things in LinkedIn was about the abundance of life. When Christ said, I come to give you life and life abundantly, I missed that out. You see, I'm not at all happy with the situation I'm in right now. So when I talked about core values, I mean, I must have skipped it. I must have just breezed over it and covered everything, and the fun is still lurking inside, which is a value which I
Yeah.
has been covered and powerful. So this is why when people listening in, they need to seek out your core values because it's been clouded by so much of what we go through in life every day that it gets back into the back store. and it's never given a chance to come out into where it's
Yeah.
supposed to be.
Or it
So
might be that you've pushed it down or rejected it as a thing that's not the best that you can bring or not what everyone else wants to hear. So although this isn't specifically one of my values, but it is a big part of me, so being organized and structured and planning, I grew up around everyone else who was not doing any of those things, and they would love for me to do those things because then stuff gets done. But I took it on as a negative thing of like, oh, I'm always the person asking people to sort something out because I need answers. If you want me to plan an event or a holiday or something, then I actually need something from you too. And I end up feeling like the nagging kind of, come on, everyone, like,
yeah, yeah,
why is
yeah,
that? You've asked me to do this and you're not responding or helping me out. And so I kind of had this narrative of it's quite annoying to be the organized person, or it's not that helpful. People are saying they want that, but they don't really want that. And so I started really playing it down. And actually that completely then worked against me because that's actually something quite core to me as well, and a great strength. There's people that have said to me, I really think you actually have the gift of administration, the way that you see the overall picture of things but the detail as well, and then you just forge ahead and go and get it all done.
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
and actually as soon as I lent into that as a positive thing, that's so releasing, like so quite exciting, and then makes me stand out from everyone else in a super helpful way, actually speaks to kind of the uniqueness that God put in me. And I was completely trying to hide it just because of life experience before.
Now, for somebody who's listening in and is writing down and saying, "Okay, Catherine, how do I start getting to my core value system and identifying it, and hopefully operating from it? Where do I start?"
So I think start by asking other people, like, what are they noticing in you, or how would they describe you?
Uh huh.
Because, and that's going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to have to tell them to actually be really honest and not just say what you want to hear.
Right.
But you're asking them to do something that's positive and empowering. So it shouldn't, ask someone that you already know is safe and who loves you and say, just start telling me what you know about me or what I show
Right.
up as. Um, and from there, you can go and write a list of, like we were saying at the beginning, of things that really, really frustrate me or suddenly make me angry when I wasn't expecting it, or things that will always get me really excited and fired up.
Mm.
And is there some kind of link between those? So there is quite a lot of kind of investigating you can do yourself, but I think there is always as well massive value on getting someone else alongside you on the journey. So whether it's like a mentor or a coach, or if you're having therapy, then ask therapists will know loads about this stuff as well, because it all comes into our identity and our purpose, really, doesn't it? Like it's all
Absolutely.
this big exciting thing. But get someone there with you on the journey who's going to ask you the questions that you might not think of to ask yourself, and to really hold you accountable to going on the longer journey with it. Because although these things are kind of in us and set in a certain way, there's still
Mm.
going to be ongoing kind of revelations that you're having about it, or things that you're going to want to kind of adjust if you end up doing a big happy collage like I did.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
probably going to I'll look at it later and go, oh, that wording isn't quite what I meant, or I've learned something else and now I need to add that on. But it doesn't mean that it's actually kind of new from nowhere. It just means that I hadn't got to that place of understanding yet.
So, how do you handle non-negotiables? Let's say you enter into a situation and there's a non-negotiable right in front of you. What do you do? Do you just back off, or just
So I
mind?
think, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And that's where different personality types, I think, will come into play a bit. So for me personally, I do tend to just back off or go a bit quiet and retreat, usually because that's a safer place for me. Other people will immediately confront it, and that's their safe way of dealing with it. But I think, it depends, doesn't it? Like how much it's really crossing something that deep in you, that
Right.
you might have a job and you're coming up against that stuff all the time and you can't quit your job because you need your job. And actually it's making the decisions of, right, how much is this hurting me and how much is this all right for a bit longer while we figure out another plan. um there are probably situations that I look back in my life now and think I could have made a stand or a different choice if I had understood myself that deeply at the time. I probably would have got out of there sooner.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
it wasn't something that was hugely hurtful, but it would have just made everything smoother and easier. Um, but I think just even just talking about this stuff more with your colleagues, with your family, with people you come across, having that shared language and actually helping people to understand this isn't just me being grumpy and irritable. This is something really key to who I am and what I bring to the world. And I actually need to be true to myself. And that is why I'm showing up as potentially a really annoying person in the meeting all the time. Or,
Yeah, right.
this is, let's just help each other out to be truly who we are. And um, yeah,
Let's close, and end up with this conversation on the goodness of God and how do we align our lives, knowing that it is His life in us.
yeah,
And we have a goal at the end of the day. How do you craft and navigate life through for yourself first as a Christian and then as a coach? Of course, there are different faiths and people coming from different angles in life, but at the end of the day, you're living out. We're all human beings. Like when you make a mistake, they always say, "But I'm human." It becomes like a catchphrase. I'm human, but it's tough. So take us there. Core values, alignment,
yeah,
through the lens of faith. Let's put it that
yeah.
way.
So for me, I find it really comforting that God has a plan because I love a plan. I've got loads of friends who really don't love a plan. And they're like, what if God has this big plan for me and I hate it? Like, what then? And I think, so again, it's personality stuff, isn't it? And but God has put really unique stuff in all of us. And I think if we're not finding out what that is and truly believing that that's actually going to be an exciting thing and a safe thing and a peaceful thing, and that God wants us to be that unique person, then it is always just going to feel off kilter. It's not going to feel aligned. And I also think that we quite often think that this purpose and this bigger plan is always going to be a mystery. And yes, there's going to be an element of that, but I really think he does want to talk to us about it. And
Yeah.
having gone on this kind of big discovery of myself, I really do feel like it's my purpose to help other people find their purpose. Um, and and I don't think it has to be hard. Like, I think because I like an adventure and I like joy, that is how I see this process being, and what I kind of bring to that space. And if you get me as a coach, then I'm like, let's just ask God a load of questions and see what he says, because he wants to be in conversation with us. He wants us to know who we are and where we're headed. And yes, he might not always give us the finer details, because that's probably not the best plan for us to know all the details. Definitely, I know for sure it's definitely not for me. Um, I still get answers from him every day, and I ask him questions and I go, well, what should I be doing and what is the plan for that? And I get answers, and I don't think that I'm kind of a particular type or special type of person that means that I get the answers and someone else doesn't. I really believe that everyone can have those kind of conversations with him. So, and actually that I might know more stuff about me now, and there is a certain element of self-awareness and emotional intelligence that make things a bit more tricky in some ways, because there is so much going on in my mind all the time, and I'm like, oh gosh, it's maybe this would be easier if I was just completely oblivious. Because it's a bit tiring doing all the work all the time. But
Yeah.
I know really that that's not true, that it is worth going there. And yeah, just being in conversation with God about all the big stuff that actually doesn't have to feel so big is amazing.
No, I mean, that's a beautiful way to close, because at the end of the day, it's all about Him and living that full life that He's given us. So on that note, Catherine, we have gone through so many emotions and phases of these core values, but I love what you have said and shared, and I think this is just the beginning of finding our true self. At the end of the day, it's a journey within to find out who we are as a people, before we can make an impact to the sphere of influence that is around us. And I think once we find that space and create that space for God to come and dwell in that space, I think that would be the winner of who we are. So, on that note, listen, Catherine, big hugs from all of us here. Thank you very much, for giving us this time and this value. I hope that you've enjoyed yourself too. And I think there's learning is for life and life is for learning. So on that note, Coach, do you think I still have a chance to change and live my values?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.